of youth, a land of energy, vitality, and ambition. However, there's an increase in the prevalence of lifestyle diseases, that is, diabetes and hypertension. Risk factors responsible for these conditions are stress, sedentary lifestyle, obesity, smoking, and excess alcohol consumption. These lifestyle conditions are also affecting their vitality and energy, and in turn leading to one prominently occurring condition of erectile dysfunction. 52% of Indian males aged 40 to 70 years are suffering from ED, leading to decrease in their confidence level. Healthy sexual life helps in maintaining the feeling of youth and overall well-being in sexual disorder like ED. Zydus Fortisa, a division of Zydus Healthcare Limited, presents Men's Sexual Health Portfolio, which comprises of Penegra, Zydalis, You Desire, Sustanon. Penegra is the #1 prescribed brand of sildenafil with half-life of 4 hours, duration of action up to 8 hours. Penegra can be recommended for moderate to severe ED patient, long-standing diabetes patient, as efficacy is independent of age, duration of ED or diabetes. Zydalis is a brand of tadalafil that comes as mouth-dissolving mint-flavored tablet. Zydalis has longer duration of action up to 36 hours with no dietary restrictions. Recommended for the treatment of younger 40+ mild to moderate ED patients. Provides spontaneity and better patient compliance. Sustanon is a brand of testosterone used in the management of ED with hypogonadism. Sustanon shows considerable increase in duration and maximum level of penile rigidity. Improved libido in hypogonadal men. You Desire is the brand of Udenafil, which gives assurance of efficacy and safety. Help your ED patients to feel youthful and maintain overall well-being with the benefits of Penegra, Zydalis, Sustanon, and You Desire.
In a webinar actually.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Aishwarya, and I welcome you all for today's webinar on sexual health. It gives me immense pleasure to welcome both national faculty and international faculty for today's webinar. To begin with, we have a very renowned doctor and my favorite moderator in sexual health, Dr. Deepak Jumani, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Aishwarya. Around the world, people love. They sing for love, they dance for love, they write stories, write poems, they write legends, they die for love, they kill for love. And we all are born out of love. Sex is a long subject when nature and cultures collide. Can we navigate through the mysteries of sex? Or can we develop some intelligence which deepens our pleasures of understanding this whole thing? Now, to understand everything about sex, we need to understand the history of it. Because history tells us and helps us to develop a better understanding. It also makes us learn about past societies, past systems, ideologies, governments, as to how they acted and what is the result today. It's like a data which we have. Don't we use data in our day-to-day life to prescribe certain things? Oh, this drug, there is a data available, so we can use it. So history is like a data. The object of keeping this webinar on history in sexuality is that we know something went wrong in our history, in some cultural problem or some religious background or some mistakes, or somebody did something where today it's become a taboo and we don't talk about it. Patients don't talk about it. Doctors don't ask about all these things. So we should learn as to what was that hitch, what was that break in the understanding and expression of it. It was not in India. We see the scriptures and sculptures of Indian temples, how they were expressive. Look at Khajuraho, look at Konark. They were very, very expressive. So it was not the Indian culture, Indian religion, which brought this inhibition in talking about it. So let's understand today as to what went wrong and how we can prevent these things to happen for our next generations or the generations to come, so that they don't be inhibited and they don't suffer from a bad quality of life, or they don't have a sexless life. Because sex is most important urge and most important thing and a part of quality of life which everybody deserves and everybody has a right to it. For this today, we have a fantastic speaker, Dr. William Staten, who's from US. I will introduce him to you later. To inaugurate this prestigious seminar, we have amidst us one of the legends of our medical fraternity, a humble, humane human being, a ophthalmologist by profession. He is none other than Dr. T.P. Lahane. He's a Padma Shri awardee. He's operated over 2 million patients and has given vision to so many individuals. He is not only given vision, but is a visionary of our fraternity today. He used to head, he was a dean of my medical college, Grant Medical College and JJ Group of Hospitals. And he's revolutionized the whole system in JJ Group of Hospitals. Such fantastic it has become today. And now he's become the director of medical education and research. He's focusing so much on bringing changes in the system of medical education. And I'm very fortunate that he's my mentor. He's my whole and soul. And he was instrumental in starting the first sexual health clinic in a government medical college across India. Put your hands together and welcome Dr. T.P. Lahane, who's going to give us his pearls of wisdom today. Over to you, Dr. Lahane, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Deepak. Whatever you have heard from Deepak, it is because we love each other. And because of that, whatever he has told, but in Marathi, Lahane is called as small. So I can't be a big man. But I am in the big man's, the gallery. So Galaxy, you can say there is a Bill Staten who is there, who is going to guide us. And then Rajasekhar Brahmbhatt sir is there. Narayan Reddy sir is there. Dr. T.S.S. Rao is there. Anita Sam is there. Aishwarya is also, I think, doing good work. And about Deepak, I want to tell you, Deepak is my best friend. And he told me that we should start the sexual health clinic in the government medical college. You know, there are so many social taboos, so many problems. And when I told my people in the government that I want to start this type of department, everybody started laughing at me. I told no, only the medical college can only start such type of department. And Deepak is the first person in India who has started sexual health clinic in the government medical college, and I'm proud of him. The second thing is not only at that place, but after that also now he is running the fellowship in the sexual health clinic, and there are 4 fellows who are now studying with him. So I think that was a really good, because he is also, see, why the teacher is not only to give the knowledge, but also not for the treating the patient, but also we will have to see that the student, we will have to, the student should pass from the same subject, so that they will now go ahead and popularize the subject. So Deepak is doing all other such type of things, and I'm very proud of him. And he's very sincere, though he stays very much away from the JJ, but at 8 a.m. sharp, he is in JJ hospital. So that is what is his commitment, and I'm very happy that in the Galaxy he called me to inaugurate about this sexual health. About the sexual health, I don't know much about it, but yes, the it is definitely required, and what Deepak was saying is very true. And I think uh, all this Galaxy, they will definitely enlighten us about the sexual health. Thank you very much. I will just say that the seminar is open for the discussion. Thank you very much.
Very much, sir. Thank you very much for your blessings, and keep blessing us. We move on to the next and the first talk of the day, which is by Dr. William Staten. William Staten does not need any introduction. He is an authority, he is a legend, he is a psychologist, sexologist, and a theologian. Before moving to Widener University in Chester, Pennsylvania, he was the founder and adjunct associate professor in the University of Pennsylvania Human Sexuality Program for over 3 decades. He retired as a professor director of Center for Human Sexuality Studies, Widener University. After he joined David Satcher, former US Journal Surgeon General, as Professor Assistant Director for the Center of Excellence for Sexual Health at Morehouse School of Medicine in Atlanta, GA. He has got over 100 publications, numerous TV and radio appearances, and over 13 documentaries. He also received the Gold Medal Award from the WAS in 2011 for promoting dialogue with religion, medicine, and sexuality. His beautiful book, The Sinless Sex, offers us a scientific basis of sexuality and has cleared lots of misunderstandings about religion, and has given us a new way to think those who are bound by religious dogmas. One sentence which hit my head like a brick was that we are all born sexual and spiritual. We cannot dissect any of these two. We are both sexual and spiritual. Friends, put your hands together and welcome Dr. Staten, who's going to tell us about history of sexuality and how sexual health needs to be promoted by our generation to help our newer generation ahead. Over to you, Dr. Staten, please. Please share your slides, sir.
Good. Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's so good to reconnect with Dr. Anita. She was one of my students at Widener, and she's the one who made arrangements for me to stay with her family, when I visited in India. I was there for the International Congress on Lifespan Sexuality Education, which many of you were there also. And so in 2007, so it's good to reconnect with all of you. And I thank you for inviting me here today to give this lecture. One of the things that was very important is when we met in Hyderabad, I learned so much that helped me understand better the history of sexuality education, because it actually began in India 5,000 to 8,000 years ago with the traditions that have developed there. And it was developed on the Indian subcontinent there. And 1.2 billion people practice Hinduism in one of its many forms. And one of the things I learned was that buried in your own scriptures is the kama, which is the enjoyment of appropriate objects by the 5 senses of hearing, feeling, seeing, tasting, and smelling, assisted by the mind together with the soul. Kama is to be learned from the Kama Sutra, or the aphorisms on love, and from the practice of citizens. So this was your rich history. And the ancient Kama Sutra from India has inspired millions of lovers around the world. Sensual artists like to depict the exotic text, and sexuality education on how to be a great lover began in India. The Kama Sutra says that which the wheel of love turns, there are no rules. Experimentation is encouraged, and lovers can be lesbian or gay men. Well, I learned so much from Khajuraho, for example, and seeing all the various depictions of sexuality in its various permutations. But what has happened is that India no longer centers around the Kama in that sense, in that I think Christianity was a deterrence to good sexual behavior and brought a lot to India in terms of the restrictions. And I think that religions and governments have been a problem in promoting good sexual health. And so what I want to do is also mention some new phenomena in human history that humans have never had to deal with before. For example, in the Christian Bible, Jewish Christian Bible, there's a biblical injunction in Genesis to be fruitful and multiply. And for many, this was the prescription for procreation, for fulfilling the earth. But that prescription has become a prescription for disaster in our time. So that because just back in 1850, there were only 1 billion people populating the earth. Today, there are over 8 billion people. So that we are propagating at and procreating at a geometric rate. Also, a big issue has been the revolution of contraception, because for the first time in history, we were able to really separate out recreational sex and procreational sex. They've always been put together, but now they can be separated and people can have sexual freedom without the fear of pregnancy or sexually transmitted infections. The other thing that's happened is that today there's no definitions that are strict about male, female, masculinity, femininity in society. We have transsexuals, we have bisexuals, we have cisgendered people, we have intersexed people, we have all permutations of gender identity and expression that people have not adhered to strictly in the past. Also, adolescence, the time between childhood and adulthood, has really changed. Back in 1850, when there was a worldwide survey, the average age that a girl started menstruating or a boy had his first ejaculation was 15 or 16. Today, that's been lowering 1 year per generation to where now the average child enters into puberty at 11 or 12, and it's not unusual to find children 8 or 9 already entering into their pubertal life. At 1850, the average age that a person entered into marriage or entered into a partnership that was sexual was 18 or 19. That has been going up until today, worldwide, it's 28 or 29. That means that adolescence was once a 2 to 4 year period where it made sense to preach abstinence because it took that long just for a person to understand themselves, their body, and the changes that were going on. But today, that's 10 to 15 years, can be cruel and inhuman when we keep that same abstinence prescription, because that's the most reproductive, procreational, hormonal stage in life. And so we need to develop a view of helping people to navigate that period of life, that in promoting sexual health and responsible sexual behavior. The other thing that we're noticing is that age and marriage has changed. Back in 1900, the average life expectancy of a couple who married at 18 or 19 was 20 or 25 years, just long enough to procreate and have their children and raise them to adulthood, and then one or both died. Today, the average age that a person can live to is 88 or 89, 78 or 78, 78 or 79. I'm 87, so I'm getting that mixed up because I've lived much longer than was expected. But we do not help people to live in a relationship that is sexual, passionate, growing for 50 or 60 years or more. And so that we need to really begin sex education, not only in childhood, but through the whole adult life and older life, that sex continues throughout the lifespan. And then finally, the internet and exposure to the variety of sexual behaviors. Today, a child 9 or 10 can hit 2 keys on their computer and be into the most sexually explicit material known. And we haven't helped them to be able to navigate that and understand it. Instead, we produce shame and guilt, which doesn't help them in their maturity. So the question is today for us, what is healthy, normal sexual behavior? And I'd like to address that in terms of history. In 1975, the World Health Organization put out a statement on sexuality. And it said this, it's a good statement. Sexual health is the integration of somatic, emotional, intellectual, and social aspects of sexual being in ways that are positively enriching and that enhance personality, communication, and love. And fundamental to this concept are the right to sexual information and the right to sexual pleasure. All this goes very much in line with what we had learned from the Kama in Hinduism, in the Kama, I mean. So what happened is that because of all the changes that are going on and the sexually transmitted diseases and the amount of abuse and the amount of ignorance and the amount of not knowing anything, the World Health Organization in the early 1990s asked the World Association for Sexual Health if there was such a thing as universal sexual rights. And so for many years, we studied this and tried to examine this using the World Association for Sexual Health, which is an organization of professionals on virtually every continent and in most countries. And they put together, developed human sexual rights and presented them in Valencia, Spain in 1997. And there we voted on them and voted to study these human sexual rights for 2 years before ratifying them in Hong Kong in 1999. Fortunately, I was a part of this. And so it became very much a part of who I was. And this is the Declaration of Sexual Rights that we put out in 1999. That sexual rights are universal human rights based on the inherent freedom, dignity, and equality of all human beings. Since health is a fundamental human right, so must sexual health be a basic human right. In order to assure that human beings and societies develop healthy sexuality, the following sexual rights must be recognized, promoted, respected, and defended by all societies through all means. Sexual health is a result of an environment that recognizes, respects, and exercises these sexual rights. And I'm going to go through these with you. And as I do, I want you to think to yourselves, what are your personal reactions to these universal sexual rights? What do you believe would be the reactions of your community that you represent? And finally, how do you see implementing these universal sexual rights in your community? The first is the right to sexual freedom. This means sexual freedom encompasses the possibility for individuals to express their full sexual potential. However, this excludes all forms of sexual coercion, exploitation, and abuse at any time and situation in life. Next, the right to sexual autonomy, sexual integrity, and the safety of the sexual body. This right involves the ability to make autonomous decisions about one's own sexual life within a context of one's own personal and social ethics. It also encompasses control and enjoyment of our own bodies, free from torture, mutilation, and violence of any sort. The right to sexual privacy. And this involves the right for individual decisions and behaviors about intimacy as long as they do not intrude on the sexual rights of others. And the right to sexual equity. This refers to freedom from all forms of discrimination, regardless of sex, gender, sexual orientation, age, race, social class, religion, or physical and emotional disability. The right to sexual pleasure. Sexual pleasure, including autoeroticism, is a source of physical, psychological, intellectual, and spiritual well-being. And then the right to emotional sexual expression. Sexual expression is more than erotic pleasure or sexual acts. Individuals have a right to express their sexuality through communication, touch, emotional expression, and love. And the right to sexually associate freely. This means the possibility to marry or not, to divorce, and to establish other types of responsible sexual associations. And then the right to make free and responsible reproductive choices. This encompasses the right to decide whether or not to have children, the number and the spacing of children, and the right to full access to the means of fertility regulation. and the right to sexual information based upon scientific inquiry. This right implies that sexual information should be generated through the process of unencumbered and yet scientifically ethical inquiry and disseminated in appropriate ways at all societal levels. And then finally, the right to comprehensive sexuality education. This is a lifelong process from birth throughout the life cycle and should involve all social institutions. And then finally, the right to sexual health care. Sexual health care should be available for prevention and treatment of all sexual concerns, problems, and disorders. These were presented to the World Health Organization, and they selected through WAS, the World Association for Sexual Health, 28 representatives to meet in Antigua, Guatemala in May 2000 in the Pan American Health Organization, which represented North America, South America, Mexico, Central America, and the Caribbean islands. And in there, we developed a document that promoted sexual health and recommended recommendations for action. This was a very important meeting, and there were two of us that developed this from each of those jurisdictions and tried to implement them. And then at the same time, our own Surgeon General, Dr. David Satcher, put out a call to action to promote sexual health and responsible sexual behavior, that the United States could take this and put it together. And one of the things that happened was that another form of government took place and even denied that these were done, that this call to action was not even allowed to be until so many people who were involved in it made it possible that it had to be and put out through the office of our own Surgeon General. So we had to ask, what are the barriers to sexual health and responsible sexual behavior? And these became really important to look at. What could be the barrier to sexual health and responsible sexual behavior? And what we found was that throughout the world, there's been personal, cultural, and social anxiety that is built up through negative attitudes, largely promoted through the Christian, Jewish, and Islamic traditions that had a negative view of human sexuality, and brought it to other places throughout the world so that it affected India, for example, and Asia, and the different countries apart from where Christianity was. So we had to look at what causes personal, cultural, and society anxiety. And one of the things we learned was that one of the barriers to sexual health and responsible sexual behavior was sexual ignorance, that we put a value on not knowing about sex so that it would not a part of our educational program other than barriers to knowledge. So sexual ignorance became a value throughout the known world at that time, as was sexual secretiveness. Sex is not something we talk about at a very deep level. And so not only do we value ignorance, but we value not talking at a very deep level about it. And this then promoted sexual trauma, that what was supposed to be very natural and beautiful and a part of our sexuality as taught in the Kama and the Kama Sutra became something that was discouraged and guilt ridden. And so then the concept becomes, well, what are the pathways to sexual behavior, to responsible sexual behavior? How do we deal with anxiety around sex that has been put into society, our societies? And one is that to combat sexual ignorance, we need sexual knowledge, that we need to help people know about their sexuality and have proper information. And sexual knowledge is something that is positive, not negative. It's not something we need to fear, but something that we need to acknowledge and promote. Sexual secretiveness, we need to combat with sexual communication. We need to learn to speak to sexual issues in a positive way and create sexual communication that is not guilt-ridden, that is not full of fear. And then finally, sexual trauma can be overcome by promoting sexual attitudes that are positive and experiences that are positive rather than making them filled with shame and guilt. This becomes very important as the pathway to going back to what the Kama Sutra taught us. And so this is a whole process that now needs to take place, and we need to deal with in our communities by promoting sexual health and responsible sexual behavior that is built on positive rather than negative influences. And we knew that governments and societies were going to be against this, because one of the ways to promote power and to keep power is to control people's sexual expression and sexual behavior. And so we need to combat that with promoting sexual knowledge, sexual communication that is deep and lasting, and positive attitudes and experiences towards sexuality. I hope this has been helpful and that there are many reactions and questions that will be raised because of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. William, for this awe-inspiring talk. There was so much to learn, so much to implement, not only in our personal life, but also to our patients, to our community at large. Before we go,
and I can make these World Association for Sexology things available for you.
Thank you very much, sir. We'll be appreciating that, and we really would love to have them. Now let's move on to the aspect from the Indian and the American perspective. We have with us Dr. Anita Shyam. She's born and brought up in India. She's a psychiatrist. She studied in my alma mater, Grant Medical College from Mumbai, and she now is based in Boston, USA. Let me ask Dr. Anita, can you tell us what is the difference did you feel in the perception of sexuality in India, where in spite of she being a female, she took up ventures like working for transgenders. She was the first to write something on Hijra community, LGBTQ community. And what did she feel from going from India to the Western country to the US? What is the change in the cultural inhibitions which she found today in Western and in Indian context? Over to you, Dr. Anita, please.
Thank you, Dr. Staten. Thank you, everybody, for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you, Dr. Deepak Jamani, for this opportunity and giving me this chance to speak about my perspective. So my perspective and my experience is also directed towards Dr. Staten, because when I came to this country in 2004, I came, of course, as a label of a psychiatrist and a clinical sexologist, but I must tell you the level of ignorance, the sexual ignorance which I had, and there was an icebreaker. I want to talk about this particular experience. 2004, January, first week, we are at Dr. Staten's class. And there we are touching and we are opening the packets of contraceptives. Um, there was one wonderful classmate of mine who's sitting right next to me, who holds the condom packet, who opens the condom packet with no hesitation. And I am here, who's a psychiatrist and a clinical sexologist, even reluctant to hold the condom in my hand. And she asked me, so Anita, what's going on? I'm like, I am not really comfortable holding this in my hand. And here, they're expecting me to be very comfortable with sexuality because I am a psychiatrist. I have a training of sexology. And there was an icebreaker in my life right in front of Dr. Staten. She not only opened the packet of condom, she rubbed it against her hand and she applied it on her face. She's like, Anita, this is just a lubricant. And not only that, she put it in between her finger and she licked it. That was a change and an icebreaker in my life, where my sexual ignorance, which comes from Asia and which comes with a lot of restriction, a lot of family restrictions, because I come from a very orthodox family. And that was a changing movement. The second moment, which I definitely want to talk about in terms of a cultural perspective, a change, is how Dr. Staten brings, he integrates his personal life, his academics in professional life, his academics and his students in his teaching in a most dignified, in a most professional way, when he talks about not only his personal experiences, but he brings about this whole life learning lessons and he gives it to his students, which I possibly haven't experienced in India. So those two perspectives is a complete shift from my Asian upbringing, from my Asian teaching to this Western world. Of course, in last so many years of my practice, I do see changes in the Indian acceptance of sexuality is, and also even in the Western, it's a changing time. It's a paradigm change, right, from a pleasing and a pleasure perspective to a more, in fact, from a pleasing to a more pleasure perspective. I see when I see my clients, they talk in terms of pleasure, and initially it was more of I want to please my partner. So the perspective and the paradigm is changing from being a pleasing to a pleasure paradigm. So I'm very grateful for this, and I'm really fortunate to see these changes in the perspectives.
Thank you, Anita. Pleasure is very important. My pleasure is my business. My pleasure is my right. That's what. Thank you for sharing your views. Now let us ask Dr. Rajshekhar Brahmbhatt, who's one of the senior most sexologists in our city of Mumbai now. He is also the emeritus of Council of Sex Education and Parenthood International. My mentor, my great teacher. I've learned a lot from him. He's been the talked about speaker in every conference, be it sexology or others. Let us hear from him his perspectives over a period of 5-6 decades, what he's been practicing and seeing Indian patients suffering from dysfunctions and cultural taboos. What is his perspective on how history has come in the way of making a person expressive and be happy and enjoy the pleasure which he deserves? Over to you, Dr. Raj Brahmbhatt, please.
Thank you very much. I was just thinking that if you don't know your history, it is like a tree without roots. So it's very important to go back to our history, which, as Dr. Staten said, we have a very, very rich history as far as the sexuality is concerned. India is the cradle of all the civilization. And if you ask me, as far as the sexuality is concerned, when you think of India, people think it's only spirituality. But one side spirituality, other side sexuality. The oldest book on this earth is Vedas. And in Rigveda also, there are mention about the sexuality. During those period, as it happened in other religion, the most important part was reproduce, reproduce, and reproduce. And to do that, the whole thing has changed when Swetaketu, one of the young boy who came after studying to his home, and his father was a great rishi and he was a very well learned person. And next door rishi comes and takes his mother, says, I want to produce some children, as if somebody is taking your mixture or something. And he was shocked. And from that time, he asked for monogamy. And that was a changing part as far as the life is concerned, that the sex within the marriage and the monogamy. And then if you see the Ramayana and Mahabharata, there are a number of examples of monogamy, polyandry, polygyny, brahmacharya, and whatnot. Every Hindu, the goal of the life was dharma, artha, kam, and moksha. Dharma is a religion, what you do, your deeds, and your moral values. Unless and until you have a dharma, even for earning earth, your day-to-day earning and getting the things, in your hand, you should have always a moral values. And after you get dharma and earth, you go to kam. And kam has been beautifully explained that it's not the equivalent to sex in the Western country. All the five senses and with the object and body, mind and soul, when all those of them, they joint and unite, and then what you experience, the sensuality part, that is kama. So kama was treated right from the beginning as a very, very well subject. And the first from Mahadeva, who is our god, his attendant Nandi, he bring down the portion of kama. And then there are a lot of things occurred which I won't be talking today, as Dr. Deepak says, that I'll be after 4 days, I'll be talking on Kama Sutra. So I'll be just touching it and going away from that. That as you see that there are books on religion, books on palmistry, books on medicine, books on Samaj Shastra, books on how to do a drama. Same way, Kama Shastra, the subject of Kama was treated as just not an ordinary brush up or it's a small things which is put below the pillow. No, it was in a very openly discussed during that period. See, not one, two. We know of, at the most Kama Sutra, Koka Sutra, Panchasayaka. But there are more than 33 books which are available. And believe me, I'll just share 2 examples, to my personal experiences. 1983 first Asian conference. And Dr. Prakash Kothari asked me, Raj, what are you going to read? And that time I was not in a sexual medicine. I said, I would like to read something which is very Indian. He said, what? And I just said Kama Sutra. He said, jumped. He said, okay, we both read together and we read on it, the ancient yet modern Kama Sutra. Believe me, for the first time, 2 podiums were kept. I was talking about the past, he was talking about the present thing. And then we took from there to the World Congress for Sexology at the 7th World Congress, which was in 1985 at New Delhi. So I saw that till today, if you ask me, I have got more than 25 to 26 books on Kama Sutra. 4 feet by 2 feet and even 2 inch by 2 inch. And all of them are, every time I read, I find something new meaning coming up over there. Lastly, as far as the 1985, I did an exhibition, Erotica. How sex was seen right from the Vedic period till the Britishers left. And as he said very rightly, that there was a lot of impact. India was all throughout invaded by outsiders, whether they were Afghans or Ghaznis or Goris or, Tughlaqs and all the people, but later on British, French, Portugal, all of them, and Wallendas, that is the Dutch people came. So ours is a mix of that. That whole period we went into a total mess. But if you see that exhibition Erotica, which I had done, it is the first of its type as far as the Indian erotic art is concerned, and second of its type in the world First was done in Norway and Sweden. And believe me, how it was treated in paintings, sculptures, day-to-day object, and manuscript. Amazing. And as you ask, what are the changes you have seen during those days? We were so worried that I'll be caught and put behind the bar saying that he's promoting some vulgar things and he's showing the pornography. And we were ready with the thing that somebody will bail me out if at all. We only came for our people. And today, as he said rightly, you take any mobile phone, any internet gadget, and within 2 clicks, you can touch to the sex. So that is what has changed. So I'm not here to say that what has happened is good or what has happened is bad. We are at a crossroad today. But let me tell you, we have a very rich heritage. Sex, we have taken it, consider it as an art. We have taken it as a music. We have taken it as a dance. We have taken it as a literature. We have taken warmth of sex into the temples of Khajuraho. Let's not look, those days of sex is a taboo is gone. But today there is a lot of information available and we need to, as he said rightly, teach the people what is right sexual health, right sexual attitude, right sexual behavior, and a responsible behavior. That is the most important word. Sex is a fragrance of life. It's a story of creation, history of creation, and history of civilization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that very inspiring note from you. You really made us speechless, and it was so soothing to hear from you, sir. It is definitely going to, impact a lot of lives when we learn every bit of what you said today. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Dr. T. Total Sex Solution Rao, TSS Rao, my favorite Dr. Rao. I'm a staunch fan. The way he works amazingly, whatever he does, he's a multitasker. Today he's here, tomorrow he'll be somewhere else, and he's always, his mission in life is to promote sexuality, to make people aware of what is right and what is rational. Sir Dr. Rao, he is a mind healer. He's a psychiatrist. Now, he studied in depth about Sigmund Freud, Alfred Kinsey, Masters and Johnson. How does these legions of our past have impacted on our minds, and how their concepts are helping us to promote sexuality? Over to you, Dr. Rao, please.
Before he says, Dr. Stephen is my mind child. So you can see that what he has done is amazing.
Absolutely.
I don't think in anybody except Modi, who is the Prime Minister, moves so much all over India. So we are going to present him 2-seater plane. He and his wife can go around and come back home early. Take care.
I'm very lucky today that I'm seeing Will Stratton. I was there in Hong Kong conference and I very vividly remember this human rights related and more particularly the sexual rights issue which was discussed. Raj Brahmapat considers me almost his son, Manasaputra. And I was initiated into the sexual medicine by Dr. Narayan Reddy. Jumani's association is almost like modern Vasan with whom we are interacting. And Anita Sharma, I have heard about you and it is really lucky day for me. Maybe the Freud and Kinsey, what Dr. Jumani was mentioning, he told me that there will be another occasion for me to talk about it. I think from that angle, the 3rd of February,
Yes,
possibly we'll be having one more session on that. At this juncture, only 2 points I will like to mention. Around 2.5 decades ago, we did a study on all the patients who come to the department. And when we analyzed the data, 50% of the people who are there in the sexual medicine clinic were related to this so-called syndrome, DAS syndrome, what we call sexual myths and misconceptions. And those who had one or other problem, almost 80% of them, this is one of the associated syndrome. And then I was very lucky that JSS University, I was able to do the PhD program and I got my PhD in 1999. And the topic was on DAS syndrome. That means we are trying to look into all the myths and misconceptions actually people have. And what Dr. Wig mentioned in 1962, that in fact, somebody attributes everything to this seminal loss, and subsequently they develop anxiety symptoms, depressive symptoms, phobic symptoms, neurasthenic symptoms, hypochondriacal symptoms, you name it. And this is so common and prevalent. And when we actually, even today in 2021, many of the patients, what they come to the department, whether they are educated or uneducated, this is the problem. And Dr. Staten mentioned very, very clearly, this ignorance is one of the most important common cause. And maybe the sexual taboos, myths and misconceptions, how we can remove it, in fact, has been brought out very, very clearly. I'm really grateful that the focus is on how actually this prevailing situations can be converted. I would just also like to mention, just like in case of men, even in women, that white discharge per vagina and what we basically call from psychiatric parlance, psychasthenic syndrome. We are trying to initiate a multicentric study, actually how common and how prevalent and what are the related issues, just like in case of men, what we were trying to see. That means there is a lot to learn in this particular area. And I'm really lucky that the focus was on getting rid of the ignorance, looking into future with a broader vision to see that a lot of things happen. And from that angle, coming down south, Dr. Raj Brahmat had inaugurated our sexual medicine clinic in 1997. And I'm really very happy that he's not only father figure, my wife considers she also daughter. That means I'm actually son-in-law in one particular way. So many actually things are happening to the very look of it is actually inspiring, and I'm really blessed today. Thank you very, very much for this great opportunity.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rao. To listen to you is really soothing, and a lot of learning from whatever you said. Of course, historians or the ancient sexologists did teach us a lot, but there is yet lots to be learned. Now, may I ask Dr. Narayan Reddy, who is the chairman emeritus of Council of Sex Education and Parenthood International. I consider him to be the father of this council and doing a wonderful job. Dr. Narayan Reddy, can you tell us, you have been seeing patients in and out, you've seen several cultures across the globe. What do you think we should do to see that this inhibition or this subject does not become a taboo for the next generation to come? What steps we should take? How we should promote our own children and how our own students as to this inhibition which is there to talk about it. They don't talk about it. There are barriers. Even physicians have barriers. They don't have time to talk about it. They think it's useless. It's nothing. There's no treatment available. So what should we do to see that we see the brighter day ahead? Over to you, Dr. Narayan Reddy, sir.
Professor Jumani, what we all have been doing is the only way to eliminate the taboo about sexuality. Dr. Rao has been speaking in many lay forums, and I keep seeing his Swarna TV in Mandya, where he's talking to general public, and Brahmbhatt was formerly writing for Debonair, which is for the lay public. Like that, I'm sure everybody is doing. On my part, I am writing in 11 media agencies every week. That apart, whatever apartment was, what the Council of Sex Education Parenthood International is doing, the one which is going to promote healthy sexual education. I should even say healthy sexuality. Now, with that, I'll come back to ancient Indian perspectives. There's one thing which most of us are not really aware. What we are talking about, what is happening today currently. From my understanding of reading many of the ancient textbooks, which are the medical and both non-medical, like the English translations of Vedas, Kama Sutra, etc. Sex was never a taboo in ancient India. Sex was considered as part and parcel of day-to-day life. If you really read Kama Sutra, you will understand that. It is the Victorian totality which came into India with the advent of East India Company and then the British king taking over it. Then we have the problem. I will quote from one of the Vedas here. In fact, Raj Brahma spoke about Rig Veda. In fact, the opening hymn of Rig Veda talks about karma, desire, but that is more applicable to the Big Bang theory of the evolution of the world. So I am not going to quote that. The next one, the fourth Veda, the other Veda, dated around 3000 to 4000 before the birth of Christ. It talks about what is central to life. I am reading ad verbatim the English translation by William Whitney, who translated Ayurveda into English. In that, this ninth hymn, Mandala 2, it says, Kama was first born. Neither gods, the fathers, nor mortals attained him. To them art thou superior, always great. To thee as such, O Kama, do I pay homage. Verily, no wind ever attains Kama, not fire, not sun, also not moon. To them art thou superior, always great. To thee as such, O Kama, do I pay homage. It very clearly says, what is the most important principle in life? I am not talking about legalities, ethics. The principle of life, what is important to the basic life is to say, Vasana in his opening remarks, by writing Kama Sutra, instead of praying to his Ishtadeva, that is his beloved God, like we write Sri Rama Jayam or Om Namah Shivaya, whatever it is, he says, Kamebhyo Namah, Dharmartha Kamebhyo Namah. He only saluted these three things. They are more important. And if you look at Upanishads, which are part of the Vedas, Brihadaranyaka Upanishad very clearly describes the female genitals, the yoni, and compares it to the homa kund of our homas. I don't want to waste your time by reading everything. The English translation available by Samuel Jeffrey in the Origins of Yoga and Tantra. Similarly, in Mahayana Buddhism, very clearly they talk about the reservation of ejaculation. Leave alone the Upanishads and Vedas. Let us come to the Ayurvedic textbook, medical. We are all healthcare professionals. One of the most ancient of the Indian Ayurvedic texts, around 600 years before the birth of Christ, the Charak Samhita, very clearly talks about all these things. And it is not judgmental about paraphilias, about orientation, about gender identity. It is non-judgmental. In fact, only in Kautilya's Arthashastra, they looked whatever happened as minor offenses and prescribed some remedial measures for that. So I don't think India ever lagged behind the world. In fact, we are the forerunners. We really respected and honored Kama or human sexuality. It is very important for us to understand. And Brahmbhatt will agree with me. There is a whole chapter which is devoted to Vajikaran, making a man like a stallion. It is nothing but aphrodisiology. And finally, before I can end, I would like to tell you only one thing. Today, as I see, I am little skeptical and disappointed. The medical fraternity is becoming with a blinkered vision, tubular vision. We are only talking about the physical aspects. We are not talking about the emotional aspects what makes a person a person. We are talking about a case of erectile dysfunction, a case of premature ejaculation, a case of this, a case of that, and prescribe Viagra, whatever it is. We are not talking about why a human being comes to us, not just because of erection, the emotions behind it. After all, with a human being, he feels he is not man enough. Why? Because he cannot perform. If he cannot perform, what way he will be affected? That's important for us to understand. He is worried about his relationship, about his losing his partner. So that's very important for us to understand. And unless we change our direction and becoming holistic, we are not going to do really good justice to us. That's a word. I will quote from two things. Now, there's an Upanishad called Isavasya Upanishad. They clearly said, it says that whatever in this world, all these things are encompassed as it were in the Supreme Being. Meaning, our ancestors considered whatever connected with life with equal seriousness, and they have categorically declared in the opening statement of Isavasya Upanishad. That is why in ancient India, any problem was seen in the total context. The problem was seen in a totality with all the minuteness of studying a particular. And we are making a mistake of looking at the minuteness only, forgetting the totality. In ancient India, because of this thinking or thought process, a sensible clinical practice stemmed from this philosophical clarity at the basis of the holistic approach toward the development of the same. So I would like India to bounce back once again, teach. I'm sorry to make this statement in the presence of Bill Staten. The point is, I do agree with the vast declaration of sexual rights and health, and ISSM are all the bodies, but we should be holistic. Unless we are holistic, there's no point in talking. When we talk about rights, we must also talk about responsibilities. Without talking about responsibility, talking about only rights is not going to help anybody. So let us be positive. Let us be proactive. Let us be thinking with clarity by telling our people what are their rights and equally what are their responsibilities. The day when we can do that, we as healthcare professionals will be doing justice to the profession we undertaken. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Reddy. I can just say it was wow. It was a big wow. Sex is holy, sex is sacred, sex is spiritual. It's not just physical intimacy, it has to be along with emotional intimacy, which are the true roots of love. That's what you said, and that's what is the most important thing. Now, I want a last remark by Dr. William Staten. Sir, you are an octogenarian. You have seen ups and downs in the field of sexual health over generations. Do you think 10 years down the line, sex will still be a taboo?
Well, I'm hoping not, because there is some hope that's on the horizon in our own country, for example, from our former government and president to our new president, who has a much more positive attitude and is going to be led by much more positive views on sexuality. I think that I believe that the bend of history is towards sexual health and responsible sexual behavior. That's what I believe and I work toward, because I think that's the bend of the universe. So that's what I'm counting on.
I think this bend will become a U-turn, and there will be no more, sex will no more be a taboo. We take your words as final. I have a couple of announcements. On the 1st of February, we are having a wonderful webinar with Dr. Barry McCarthy, who's going to talk to us about couples sex therapy. And on the 3rd, again, we have a webinar with Dr. T.S.S. Rao and Dr. Raj Brahmbhatt. The title is sex still a taboo or sex is no more a taboo? This is the 2 announcements which I had to make. I thank everybody from the bottom of my heart. And Sir Dr. William Staten, for you, my heart has no bottom at all. Thank you very much for being here and sparing your valuable time and
Thank you.
sharing your wisdom, enlightening us, making us rich. And of course, all the panelists, Dr. Reddy, Dr. Rao, Dr. Anita, Dr. Raj Brahmbhatt, thank you very much and have a blessed day and have a blessed life. Let's say sex is to be used and not abused. Thank you very much. Good night.
Dr. Bill, all the
Thank you very much, sir.
keep healthy and same thing
To
with
everybody in India, and great day for Dr. William Staten.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you to all our speakers from all over the world. It was a pleasure connecting to all of you, with all of you. We look forward to learn from you again, sir and madam. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Staten. Thank you, Raj. Thank you, Rao. Thank you, Dr. Reddy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.